I was sitting across from a supervisor. I asked him what he did when an employee missed a task. And he said, well, I actually didn't bring it up because I wanted to give the employee grace. That one decision that kept quietly happening was costing the company more than anyone could ever imagine. Grace without accountability silently erodes your authority. It quietly sets standards that you actually didn't mean to set. As a leader, what would your first reaction be if someone that you asked who was in charge of managing your team, what happened when this person missed an important task, and they said, I didn't do anything. I let the person have grace. This is not about micromanaging a team, but I want to talk about how grace without accountability silently erodes your authority and how it quietly sets standards that you actually didn't mean to set. This supervisor was a really good worker. So don't get me wrong. He would stay late. He would jump in. The team praised him. The clients praised him. He was very reliable. If you needed him, he was there. He could solve some of the most complex issues on the team. So he was a very vital part of the team. And you can probably relate to this because that's probably who you are. You're the one who's staying late. You're the one who's getting things done whenever the team needs you. You're jumping in. You're putting out fires. You're everywhere. Wherever the team needs you to be, you're there. It's your company. It's your baby. It's your business. Sometimes this can look like you're being responsible. This can look like you're being proactive, like you're being busy, like you're making sure that things get done no matter what. You are the leader who no one's going to outwork you. But I want to name the truth here that you are secretly teaching your team, A, not to have problem solving skills, and B, to rely on you to get everything done. And I know many founders can relate to this because I've worked with them actually behind their business, where they're the ones who are operating in their business and not on their business. They're so busy in the day-to-day that they can't pull themselves out of it. There are 4 things that I want you to take away from this video today. The first thing is grace without accountability is not grace. The second thing is silence sets the standard whether you intend it to or not. The third thing is grace is sometimes fear wearing a costume. And grace sometimes breeds entitlement, not gratitude. Grace is saying to someone, yes, I understand that these are the circumstances. This task was missed. Going forward, this is what we expect. So you're still acknowledging that the circumstances exist. You have to allow people to show you what it is that they can do. If you're going to constantly be the one that's taking it over, you really don't give them the opportunity to show you their potential. If you're always going to be the one that jumps in, if you are determining for them what they're capable of, yes, people are going to make mistakes. That's part of it. We bake that into the thing that we're handing over. But just saying, well, I'm not going to give it to them because they can't handle the task, that assumption is quietly costing you money. It's costing you time, it's costing you energy, and it's costing you money. If you're doing the work that you hired them for, you're not leading. You should be leading the company forward. And instead, you're busy doing the work that you hired them to do. So it's almost like a waste of money at that point because they're not doing the work. You're doing the work. Point 2, silence sets the standard. High performers are always watching. They see what you enforce and they see what you let slide. And when accountability collapses, they don't think that they should work harder. They ask, why should I work harder if this is the standard here? And what ends up happening inside the team is they end up slowing down. They end up questioning your authority. They don't really trust your authority. They may complain, but honestly, after a while, they stop complaining. They start being silent, and silence is deadly. Silence on either side, silence from your team or silence from you, is a decision. And it's not always a good decision. Oftentimes it is a warning. It's a warning to your team that standards are not being upheld. And if your team is being silent, it's a warning to you that they are quietly disconnecting from you. Words without follow through are just words. Standards that only live inside of meetings that aren't actually documented aren't really standards at all. Honestly, your team already knows your standards, whether you intend those to be your standards or not. Whew, that was a long point. Let's move on to point 3. Grace is sometimes fear wearing a costume. So A lot of times we give grace because we're afraid of losing someone or losing what that person is doing for us in our business, or we're afraid of what might happen if we hold that person accountable. They add so much value. Your team notices, and it quietly erodes the trust between you and the rest of your team. Sometimes it comes because you don't want to be looked at as the villain, especially if you're a minority and you're in leadership. We are not blind to the fact that there are certain prejudices against those of us in leadership who are minorities. And we don't want to look like whatever the stereotype is that we've been painted as that sort of leader. What it can look like on the outside is having patience, flexibility, and understanding with that person. But then to others, it looks a little bit different when you're talking to them. It means that you don't address the underperformers because the team is fragile, because you feel like, well, it's already hard to find people. It's going to take too long for me to, replace them. I don't want to put the team at risk. So, you just end up being quiet, or you call it empathy, or you're kind of self-protecting your company, but you're lowering the morale of the rest of the team, because if they're seeing that people can kind of get away with this sort of thing, then it impedes production. It stops the revenue from churning in, because now we're damaging the reputation of the company. Fear-based grace protects you from hard moments, but accountability-based grace protects them from patterns that cost them from losing their job. You cannot lead from fear and call it grace. And point number 4 is that grace can sometimes lead to entitlement. So I remember talking to a founder. It was 2 co-founders, and they were like, we give so much to this team. We extend so much to this team. They're so entitled. And if you've ever found yourself saying that, I hear you, but it is, again, grace without accountability. So entitlement is not a character flaw of the team. It's just that the team understood what the real was. Everything became negotiable, and they learned how to push back. They were questioning her authority. And this is why I say that just because you're in a position of leadership, that does not mean that you are in a position of authority. It's what I call the authority gap. People do not rise to your level of grace. They rise to your standards, and they either meet the expectations or they don't meet the expectations. When grace becomes the standard, the expectation is already gone. It's already out the window. And I was once there. I was once sitting in that same seat where I was extending a lot of grace, not telling people the truth, not telling them what was going on, for fear that they would either leave, or it would fracture the team, or it would make me look like a villain. And then things were slipping through the crack. Escalation kept piling up. I was exhausted. I was doing the work of 2 people, and it was exhausting. And I was becoming resentful, and I was becoming somebody I didn't like. Once I checked myself, because I always think that it starts with the self, then I was able to check the supervisor and tell him, hey, look, this is not grace, right? I had to have him shift something inside of him that said, hey, when you are taking over this accountability piece, when you are allowing things to happen, you are setting yourself up to take on all of the consequences, all of the burdens, everything that comes along with this grace. And so afterwards, something wild happened. This supervisor then started making it very clear that he was not accepting any responsibility for their missed stuff. Like, he was like, what's going on with this? Setting deadlines for this, checking in on this. Let me see what's going on with that. Like, he made it very clear that I am not taking on this responsibility. We had more of a shift that happened within the team. Then that meant that now we can take off whatever he was doing on his plate and place it on the seniors. And then the seniors can help the juniors. It was a whole trickle down effect. And the team started to operate more peacefully and more smoothly. Same team, same workload, just a whole nother structure. And all because one person stopped absorbing accountability that didn't belong to him. If it's one thing that I want you to walk away with, it's this. Every deadline that you let slip, it's yours. Every conversation that you avoid having is yours. Every standard that you don't enforce is yours. You did not set them free. You put yourself on the hook, and you're absorbing the cost. Every cost that's associated with this. The revenue cost, the emotional cost, the mental cost, the overwhelmed cost, everything that goes along with this, because there is a cost. Every single time, grace is leading the show. If you recognize yourself in any of this, then I want you to go to the link in the description and download the root cause. It goes into the patterns that show up like this as revenue leaks and team issues. And so you can find that at the link in the description.